We don't build teams to accomplish tasks. We build teams so people don't have to face tasks alone. Let that sit for a moment. In a world obsessed with productivity, performance metrics, and bottom lines, we forget something fundamental. Teams are made of people, and people don't just want to work, they want to belong. They want to matter. They want to feel safe enough to care. Today, I want to share with you 6 key principles to building powerful, resilient, and purpose-driven teams. Not just teams that win, but teams that endure, that trust, that grow. We live in a world obsessed with performance, with metrics, with shiny resumes and pristine LinkedIn profiles. We evaluate people based on their grades, their accomplishments, the companies they've worked for, and the accolades they've stacked neatly like trophies on a shelf. We've convinced ourselves that the best teams are the ones made up of the most talented individuals. But we've gotten it backward. The starting point isn't talent, it's trust, and without trust, all that talent is just noise. Imagine assembling a team purely based on skill. Every member is an expert in their field. They know their stuff inside and out. But the pressure hits when the stakes are high, when uncertainty creeps in, as it always does. You begin to notice something missing. They hesitate. They guard themselves. They withhold because there is no trust. And without trust, no one dares to raise their hand and say, I don't know. No one feels safe to ask for help. No one wants to be the one to admit they dropped the ball. They're too busy protecting their image, shielding their ego. And so they play defense, not for the team, but for themselves. Now contrast that with a team built on trust. A team where someone can walk into the room, look you in the eye, and say, I'm struggling. And instead of judgment, they're met with support. A team where mistakes are owned, not buried. Where feedback is not a weapon, but a gift. That's where real growth happens. That's where performance is born. Not from fear, but from safety, from connection, from the kind of courage that only emerges when people feel they matter beyond their output. Let's take a look at one of the highest performing teams on the planet, Navy SEAL Team 6. These are the elite of the elite, people whose missions are a matter of life and death. And yet, when they evaluate potential members, they don't obsess over who can bench the most weight or run the fastest mile. They ask one question above all: who do we trust with our lives? Because they know something we often forget in the corporate world: skill without trust is dangerous. It creates instability, friction, and in their case, it could cost lives. They've learned that it's better to have a teammate who may be slightly less skilled, but who can be trusted deeply. Someone who shows up consistently, who puts the team above self, who owns their mistakes and lifts others up when they fall. That kind of teammate creates space for the entire team to thrive, to push harder, to risk more. Because they're not looking over their shoulder. They're looking forward together. Trust is not just a soft, fluffy ideal. It's not just about being nice or getting along. It's about creating a foundation so solid that people can stand on it when everything else shakes. It's the difference between surviving and excelling, between going through the motions and doing work that actually matters. In the workplace, trust shows up in small but powerful ways. It's when someone covers for you without being asked, because they know you would do the same for them. It's when you say, I don't know how to do this. And instead of losing respect, you gain. It's when mistakes are seen not as reasons to blame, but as opportunities to learn and improve. It's when you can walk into a meeting and leave your armor at the door, because you know the people in the room see you, not just your performance. Trust creates. When we trust, we don't waste time second-guessing intentions. We don't engage in back-channel politics or defensive maneuvers. We move faster, because we move together. Trust creates resilience. When things go wrong, and they always do, we don't crumble or scatter. We rally, we adapt, we grow stronger because we know we're not alone. And trust creates innovation, because only in an environment where people feel safe can they take the kinds of creative risks that move the needle, that disrupt industries, that change the game. We all say we want high performance, but what if performance is not the driver, but the result? What if the secret to unlocking people's full potential is to first make them feel safe enough to be seen, to be real, to be human? Because when we start with trust, we send a powerful message. You matter more than your output. You're not just a cog in the machine. You are the machine. And if you break down, we all break down. So let's take care of each other. Let's build teams that breathe, that listen, that hold space for one another, not just in the good times, but especially in the messy middle. And here's the most beautiful part. When people feel safe, when they feel seen, when they know their value isn't conditional, they rise. They exceed every expectation. They go beyond KPIs and job descriptions. They innovate. They collaborate. They stay late not because they have to, but because they want to. Because they believe in what they're building. Because they believe in each other. This is what separates a group of talented individuals from a truly great team. The former may win for a while, but the latter endures, thrives, evolves. Talent will get you through the door. But trust is what keeps you in the room. It's what builds legacy. And if we want to create teams, organizations, and cultures that actually matter, not just on paper but in the hearts and minds of people, we have to start with trust. Always. So the next time you're hiring, promoting, or assembling a team, ask yourself the real question. Not who's the most talented, but who do I trust to walk beside me when things get hard? Because that's the person who will carry the mission, the team, and the vision farther than any resume ever could. Imagine standing in front of your team, a blank whiteboard behind you, markers ready, and an entire strategy laid out in your head. You begin outlining tasks, setting timelines, assigning responsibilities. Everyone nods. The room is quiet but attentive. You think they've got it, but something's missing. And it's not the what, it's the why. Because without the why, all you have are to-do lists. And people don't wake up inspired by checklists. People don't get behind goals. They get behind meaning. They don't march through uncertainty and hardship because you told them to. They do it because they believe in something. And belief starts with why. Think about it. Every great movement in history, every company that's changed the world, every leader who's sparked action, they all started with purpose. They didn't begin by telling people what to do. They began by telling them why it mattered. And yet in the busyness of business, we forget this. We fall into the trap of task orientation. We issue instructions. We manage performance. We track KPIs. But we forget to connect the work to something bigger. We forget that the human spirit doesn't respond to commands. It responds to conviction. No one dreams about better spreadsheets. No one is inspired to bring their best self to fill out reports. But they will show up early, stay late, and give their heart if they know their effort is changing something that matters. This is why the story of the janitor at NASA is more than a feel-good anecdote. It's a fundamental truth about human motivation. When President Kennedy walked through NASA and asked a janitor what he did, he wasn't expecting the answer. I'm helping put a man on the moon. That moment tells us something profound. Even the smallest roles become sacred when they are tied to a greater cause. That janitor wasn't just mopping floors. He was sweeping the path toward human achievement. He wasn't maintaining a building. He was making history. And that sense of meaning didn't come from a job description. It came from culture, from leadership, from a shared and repeated why. When you lead with why, you give people something to belong to. And belonging is more powerful than compliance. When people belong, they own the mission. They don't just follow instructions. They follow the vision. They don't just contribute. They commit. And commitment is what gets you through the days when the work is hard, the results are slow, and the obstacles seem insurmountable. But here's the thing. The why isn't a one-time speech. It's not a kickoff meeting or a page in the company handbook. The why has to be woven into everything you do. It has to echo in every conversation, every strategy, every review. It has to be repeated until it becomes the pulse of the team. Until people don't just remember it, they feel it. You want your team to be able to finish your sentences. When you talk about purpose, you want them to quote it back to you when things get tough. You want them to believe in it so deeply that even when you're not in the room, they still carry it forward. Purpose transforms ordinary work into meaningful contribution. But purpose doesn't come automatically. It has to be fought for. It has to be protected. Because over time, organizations drift. They get distracted by metrics, processes, efficiency. They start chasing the what and forget the why. And that's when energy fades. Innovation stalls and culture erodes. So start every project with the why. Not just at the beginning, but throughout. In team huddles, in emails, in one-on-ones. Remind your people why their work matters. Not just what they're supposed to do. When someone designs a product, don't just celebrate the feature. Celebrate the life it will impact. When someone solves a problem, don't just thank them for their speed. Thank them for how their thinking keeps the mission moving. Language matters. Repetition matters. Emotion matters. Because meaning isn't delivered. It's cultivated. This doesn't mean ignoring goals. Goals are important. But they are the means, not the motivation. People don't rally around metrics. They rally around move. If you want your team to go farther, dig deeper and reach higher. Give them a reason that stirs the soul. Make it emotional. Make it human. Make it bigger than the job. Because here's the truth, we're all janitors at NASA. Every one of, whether we're coding software, serving customers, designing products, or leading meetings, we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. Or at least we can be, if someone will show us the why. So before you write the next plan, before you send the next directive, pause. Ask yourself, why does this matter? And more importantly, how can I make my team feel it? Don't assume they see it. Show them. Don't just say it once. Say it again and again, until it lives in the culture, until it's not just a line in a speech. It's a way of being. Because when people are aligned with purpose, they don't need to be pushed. They move with passion. And passion isn't something you manage. It's something you unleash. Start with why. Always. Tattoo it on the culture. Because when people know the purpose, they'll move mountains to make it. Imagine stepping into a room where you are not just heard, but truly listened to. A room where every idea, no matter how unusual or rough around the edges, is welcomed with curiosity instead of criticism. That's not a fantasy. That's the heartbeat of great leadership. Also the foundation of every high-performing team. But this doesn't happen by accident. It begins with something deceptively simple yet profoundly powerful. Making it safe to speak up. We like to think that the best teams are made up of the smartest people. We chase resumes, degrees, and credentials as if they hold the key to innovation. But intelligence alone isn't what drives greatness. In one of the most extensive studies on team performance ever conducted, researchers discovered something unexpected. The top performing teams weren't the ones with the highest collective IQ. They were the ones where people felt safe. Safe to speak. Safe to question. Safe to challenge. Safe to say, I don't know. Safe to be human. Now, pause for a moment and think about that. When was the last time you felt completely safe being yourself in a group setting? No filters, no masks, no rehearsed lines. Just you, raw, honest, and present. For many people, that space is rare. Too rare. And that's a problem. Because when people don't feel safe, they shut down. They retreat. They withhold insights. They nod in agreement when their gut says otherwise. They sit on ideas that could change everything. Not because they don't care, but because they're afraid. Afraid of judgment. Afraid of being wrong. Afraid of being made to feel small. And in that silence, potential is lost. Let me be clear. Fear kills innovation. It strangles creativity before it can take its first breath. It builds walls between teammates. It turns collaboration into competition. And when we allow fear to dictate our culture, whether in a company, a classroom, or a community, we lose the very thing that gives us our edge. The ability to think differently, challenge norms, and dream boldly. So what does it look like to create safety? It doesn't take a grand strategy. It takes intention. It starts with listening, not just to respond, but to understand. It's in the quiet moment when someone hesitates before speaking, and you lean in and say, what's on your mind? It's in the way we handle mistakes, not as grounds for shame, but as opportunities for learning. It's choosing curiosity over criticism, compassion over control. And yes, sometimes it's as simple as saying, tell me more. 3 words, 1 invitation, an open door. When someone shares an idea, especially one that seems wild or unconventional, those 3 words can change everything. Because they signal trust. They say, I see you, I value your voice. And that feeling is electric. When people feel seen and heard, they start to show up more fully. They take risks. They speak up. They challenge. They contribute not just their labor, but their heart. And that's when magic happens. Think of the quiet ones in your meetings, the ones who observe more than they speak. Their silence isn't absence. It's potential. They're watching, listening, deciding whether this space is truly safe. And if we're not intentional, we'll miss their brilliance. Because make no mistake, brilliance doesn't always come wrapped in volume. Sometimes it's a whisper waiting for an invitation. And what about the person who failed last week? Or the one who challenged a decision and felt the room go cold? What message did they receive? Because culture isn't built in the moments of success. It's built in the moments of discomfort. The way we respond in those moments tells everyone else what's truly safe. So let's respond with empathy, with grace, with the awareness that every person walking into our room is carrying their own story, their own fear, and their own longing to belong. When we make it safe to speak up, we do more than create better teams. We unlock human potential. We give people permission to be real. We move from a culture of perfection to one of progress, from silence to synergy, from compliance to commitment. And here's the most beautiful part. When someone feels safe enough to be vulnerable, they give others permission to do the same. It creates a ripple effect. One person, one brave moment, one voice saying, "I think we can do better," can shift the entire. But that courage only shows up where it feels welcome. So ask yourself, what kind of space are you creating? Are you listening with curiosity or judgment? Are you making room for the quiet voices? Are you honoring mistakes as part of the process? Because that's the real work of leadership. Not having all the answers, but creating the space where others are safe to bring theirs. Let us build environments where people don't just survive, they thrive. Where fear has no place and potential has no limits. Where every voice matters and every idea is worth exploring. Because the moment people feel safe, they stop hiding, they stop holding back, and they start to soar. Too often in our pursuit of excellence, we fixate on the finish line. We idolize the trophy, the big win, the flawless execution. And in doing so, we miss the heartbeat of what truly drives people forward. We overlook the quiet moments of effort, the small but significant steps, the late nights, the early mornings, the messy middle. The truth is, greatness isn't born at the summit, it's forged in the climb. We live in a world obsessed with perfection. Social media shows us the end results, the filtered victories, the polished products, the highlight reels. But life, real life, is not a highlight reel. It's a series of unglamorous, gritty moments, strung together by sheer effort. It's that first awkward pitch, that first failed prototype, that first no, that stings more than it should. And yet we keep showing up, we keep going. That is progress. That is courage. When we only celebrate perfection, we build a culture where people hesitate, second guess, play it safe. Because perfection is paralyzing. It whispers, if it's not flawless, don't bother. It convinces us that anything less than ideal is failure. But progress says try anyway. Progress says it's okay to fall as long as you get back up. Progress is the quiet, unsexy hero that perfection could never be. The best leaders, the ones who inspire, who ignite, who move people, they understand it. They know that celebration should not be reserved for the final step. It belongs at every step. They applaud the attempt, not just the result. They recognize that every bit of movement forward, no matter how small, is worthy of acknowledgement. Because people don't need to be perfect to feel they just need to know they matter. They need to know that someone notices when they try. Harvard Business School conducted a powerful study where researchers tracked the daily experiences of employees. They weren't looking for grand gestures or sweeping reform. They simply wanted to understand what made people feel motivated, day in and day out. The answer wasn't bigger paychecks, or unlimited coffee, or game rooms in the office. The answer was progress. The single greatest motivator was making meaningful progress in one's work. Think about that. Not a new title, not a fancy bonus, just the feeling that what I did today moved the needle, that I got better, that something I contributed mattered, that I'm not stuck, invisible, replaceable, but instead that I'm growing, and that someone sees. When we recognize progress, we create a ripple effect. We breathe life into someone's journey. We say, I see you, I see your effort, I see your fight. That moment of recognition becomes fuel. It turns doubt into confidence. It transforms fatigue into focus. And most importantly, it builds trust. Trust between leaders and their teams. Trust between peers. Trust in the mission. Let's be honest. Progress is not linear. It never has been. It's a winding path, full of pivots and potholes and pauses. Sometimes it feels like we're taking 2 steps back for everyone forward. But if we only celebrate when everything goes perfectly, we'll celebrate almost never. And that's not sustainable. That's not human. People need to be encouraged in the middle, in the moment when they're unsure, but still trying. And let's not forget the courage it takes to keep trying, to get back up after a setback, to raise a hand after being shut down, to start again after failing. That deserves applause. Not just quietly, loudly, publicly, sincerely. Because the people who show up day after day, with heart and grit, they are the ones who carry the mission forward. They are the heartbeat of any great team, any great company, any great cause. Progress is also contagious. When you celebrate one person's growth, others feel empowered to pursue their own. When someone's small win is acknowledged, it sends a signal: here, effort matters. Here, people matter. That's how you build culture. Not with posters on the wall or slogans in the handbook, but with moments of real recognition, with honest human connections that say, keep going, you're on the right track. We are not machines. We are not wired to only chase end results. We crave meaning. We crave We crave moments where we feel alive. Like what we're doing is part of something bigger. And that sense of meaning doesn't wait at the top of the mountain. It meets us in every step we take toward it. So if you're leading a team, or raising a child, or building a dream, don't wait for the perfect moment to celebrate. Celebrate the imperfect ones. The first drafts, the learning curves, the missteps that taught something valuable. Honor the resilience it takes to keep showing up. Recognize the bravery it takes to take initiative. Applaud the person who finally spoke up, even if their voice shook. That is leadership. That is love. Because in progress, we don't just find momentum. We find identity. We remember who we are and what we're capable of. We remember that our work is not in vain. We remember that we are not alone, that someone is watching, caring, cheering us on. And in those moments, we feel something powerful, not just success, but significance, not just movement, but meaning, not just doing, but becoming. And that is worth celebrating every step of the way. Leadership isn't about standing at the top of a hierarchy, barking orders, arms crossed with a detached sense of superiority. It's not about titles, parking spots, or accolades. True leadership is the willingness to shoulder responsibility for others, to lean in when things get hard, to care even when it's not convenient. Leadership is not a crown you wear, it's a burden you carry. And at the core of that burden is empathy, not ego. Empathy is what connects people. It's what reminds us that leadership is fundamentally human. The best leaders aren't those who demand respect. They earn it through understanding, compassion, and the courage to care. They don't just see the job that needs to get done. They see the person trying to do it. They understand that behind every performance is a human being with fears, dreams, and a story. Think about the moments in your life when someone really showed up for you. Not with solutions, not with criticism, but with presence, with listening, with kindness. Those are the moments that stay with us. Not because someone was powerful, but because they were present. That's empathy in action. That's what changes lives. When Captain William Swenson leaned down in the chaos of war, in the noise and confusion and fear, and kissed a wounded soldier on the forehead, he wasn't following a protocol. There was no manual for that. That wasn't strategy. That was the human spirit stepping forward in the middle of hell and saying, I see you, I care. Leadership isn't forged in boardrooms or by spreadsheets. It's forged in moments just like that. Moments when it would be easier to retreat, to harden, to numb yourself. But instead you choose to feel. You choose to care. You choose to act with heart. Empathy builds trust. Trust builds loyalty. And loyalty builds legacy. Not the kind of legacy etched into stone or stitched onto a nameplate, but the kind that's carried in the hearts of those you've impacted. People will forget what you said. They'll forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. We live in a world obsessed with optics. Everyone's curating, presenting, posturing. But people don't need perfection from their leaders. They need authenticity. They need someone willing to ask, how are you? Not the surface level pleasantries, not the checkbox conversations, but a real question with the space for a real answer. When leaders take time to ask that question and truly listen to the answer, they tell people they matter, that they're not just tools to achieve a goal, but human beings worthy of dignity and care. And that changes everything. Because when people feel seen, they give more, they care more, they become invested in something bigger than themselves. You don't inspire people by being untouchable. You inspire them by being human. And empathy doesn't make you weak. It gives you the strength to lift others. When someone's struggling, they don't need you to fix everything. They need to know they're not alone. They need to know someone's in it with them, that someone believes in them even when they're faltering. Empathy is not the easy path. It's far easier to lead with ego, to demand, to control, to enforce. But that doesn't build connection. It builds compliance. There's a world of difference between people who follow you because they have to and people who follow you because they want to. When leaders lead with ego, they create environments of fear. People play it safe. They stop taking risks. They silence their ideas. They don't raise their hand when something's wrong because they're afraid of the consequences. But when leaders lead with empathy, they create environments of safety where people can speak up, push boundaries, admit mistakes, and grow. Empathy doesn't mean letting people off the hook. It means understanding why they fell in the first place. It means having the courage to say, I see you're struggling, let's figure this out together. That's what gives people the strength to get back up. That's what builds resilience. Not through pressure, but through partnership. The truth is, we're all carrying something. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you don't see. When you lead with empathy, you give people the grace to be human. And in return, they give you their best self. They bring more than just their skills. They bring their hearts, their ideas, their energy. They show up not just to work, but to serve a purpose. What if we stopped asking people to check their emotions at the door? What if we stopped pretending that professionalism means detachment? What if we created cultures where people could be whole, where their humanity was not a liability but an asset? Empathy doesn't just belong in crisis. It belongs in everyday moments, in hallway conversations, in emails and feedback sessions. It belongs in how we celebrate people and how we challenge them. It belongs in how we welcome new ideas and how we handle conflict. It belongs in how we show up every day. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. It's about creating space for others to rise. It's about seeing the person behind the performance and understanding that before someone can thrive, they need to feel safe. They need to feel like they matter. And yes, you have that power. Not by being perfect, but by being present, by choosing empathy over ego, by choosing to care when it would be easier to close off. That's the kind of leader the world is desperate for. Not the loudest, not the boldest, but the most human. So the next time someone on your team is quiet, ask them how they're doing. The next time someone makes a mistake, ask what support they need to grow. The next time you're faced with a hard decision, don't just ask, what's the right answer? Ask, what's the kind thing to do? Because in the end, people won't follow you because you're in charge. They'll follow you because you took care of them, because you led not from above but from beside. And that is leadership worth remembering. A great team isn't static, it evolves. It learns and it grows. That might sound like a simple statement, but behind it lies the deepest truth about what it means to build something extraordinary together. Growth isn't a destination. It's not something we check off a list. It's a process, a mindset, a commitment, not just individually but as a collective together. Too often we think of growth as something personal, something we chase in solitude, a course we take, a book we read, a certification we earn. But that's only a piece of the puzzle. In the context of a team, personal development is not enough. What really moves the needle is shared development. Growth that doesn't stay locked inside one person, but spills over into every conversation, every collaboration, every problem we solve together. You see, when we commit to growing as a team, we create something far more powerful than a collection of high performers. We create a culture of continuous improvement, a living, breathing ecosystem, where feedback flows freely, ideas bounce with energy, and everyone feels a sense of ownership over where we're headed. That kind of environment doesn't happen by accident. It's built intentionally, with care and with a willingness to embrace discomfort. Because here's the truth no one tells you about growth. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it rarely is. Growth means change. And change means friction. Real growth happens not when we're cruising in our comfort zones, but when we're stretched, challenged, and even a little bit shaken. That's how iron sharpens iron. Not through gentleness, but through pressure, through heat, through sparks flying in the forge of honest conversations, tough lessons, and hard-earned wisdom. This is where feedback becomes not a critique but a gift. Imagine a team where feedback isn't feared but welcomed, where it's not something to survive but something to seek out. Not just top-down but in every direction. Lateral, bottom-up, peer-to-peer. A culture where the question isn't did I do well but how can I do better? That single shift changes everything. It replaces ego with curiosity, silence with dialogue, stagnation with momentum. Mentorship is a natural extension of that spirit. Not formal, not rigid, not hierarchical, but alive, organic. Mentorship in the everyday moments. A shared coffee, a post-meeting debrief, a quick message of encouragement or advice. When we mentor each other, we create a ripple effect of knowledge and confidence. And when we allow ourselves to be mentored, we show that growth isn't just for the new or the junior. It's for everyone. At every stage, always. Shared development also means shared reflection. Great teams don't just do the work, they study it. They examine what worked, what didn't, and why. They ask bold questions. They hold retrospectives, not just to tick a box, but to extract gold. They turn every mistake into a map, every misstep into a stepping stone. It's not about blame, it's about learning. Imagine the power of a team that isn't afraid to admit what went wrong, because they trust each other enough to grow from it. There's an emotional energy that comes with this kind of environment, a sense of movement, of progress, of possibility. It's electric. When one person learns something new and shares it, others light up. When someone takes a risk and grows, others feel inspired to stretch. When someone stumbles and is met with support instead of shame, others feel safe to try. This is how a team rises, not by competing internally, but by committing collectively. When one person levels up, the whole team elevates. That's the power of unity and growth. But it requires intention. Growth doesn't become a team ritual unless we make it one. It has to be baked into the culture, into our rhythms, our language, our rituals. It could be a weekly reflection, a monthly team learning session, a rotating spotlight, where people share lessons learned from success and failure. These aren't just check-ins. They're touch points for transformation. Think about what happens when growth becomes the heartbeat of the team. Trust deepens, collaboration sharpens, confidence builds. People don't just feel like employees, they feel like builders, like co-creators of something that's evolving in real time. And with that feeling comes commitment. Not the kind of commitment you can mandate, but the kind that comes from within, from belonging, from being seen not just for who you are, but who you're becoming and who you're helping others become. And here's the beautiful paradox. When we stop seeing growth as a solo journey and start investing in it together, that's when we grow the most as individuals. We unlock parts of ourselves we didn't know existed. We gain new perspectives from the people we work with. We stretch into roles we never thought we'd be ready for. We find courage in community. And suddenly our growth isn't just about us. It's about legacy, about what we're leaving behind, not just for the next quarter, but for the next generation. That's what it means to commit to growth together. It's not just a strategy. It's a decision to lean in, to be brave, to be vulnerable, to choose the friction of truth over the comfort of silence, to challenge each other not from a place of criticism, but from a place of to believe that what we build together is worth more than what any of us could build alone. So yes, a great team evolves. It learns. It grows. But not in isolation. In connection. Through tension. And above all, through a shared belief that the best is always ahead. If we're willing to grow toward it. Together. So how do we build teams that truly thrive? We build trust. Not just hire talent. We begin with why. Not what. We foster safety. Not silence. We celebrate progress. Not perfection. We lead with empathy. Not ego. We grow together. Not alone. This isn't just a strategy. It's a commitment to the human spirit. Because in the end the best teams aren't made of stars. They're made of people who believe in one another. And when people believe in each other, there's no limit to what they can build together. Thank